Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this Eurostat's webinar, which will be on Eurostat's top and trending skills tool. My name is Romina Brondino. I am an information and communication officer at Eurostat, and I will be the moderator for this session. Before we start with the presentations, I'd like to say a couple of things. As many of you know already, this event will be recorded. The recording will be available both on our Facebook page and on our website after the webinar. So if you cannot stay until the end, don't worry, you can watch it later. At the end, there will be an opportunity for questions and answers. And for this session, we would like you to send us your questions via Slido. You need to use the slido.com code that you can see here on the screen. It's #2561562. You can also use the QR code, and the link is also available on Eurostat's stream page. So you're welcome to send your questions anytime. And then when we move to the Q&A session after the presentations, we will answer them. On Slido, you will also find a short survey so that you can give us some feedback after the webinar. I think that's it for housekeeping. Let's go into the webinar. Today, we will learn more about Eurostat's top and trending skills tool. This is an interactive tool where you can see which are the most demanded job skills in Europe. And I think it can be useful for anyone, for people who are looking for a job, for students deciding on their study path, for those who want to keep their skill set up to date, for companies looking for people. So I think we are all looking forward to learning more about this data and how the tool works. And for this, I'm joined by 3 Eurostat experts. Fernando Reis, that you can see on the left side of the screen. Fernando is a statistical officer at Eurostat, and he works with new data sources for official statistics. Good morning, Fernando.
Morning.
And then we have Julia Uhausen. Julia, she's Information and Communication Officer working with web dissemination. Welcome, Julia.
Good morning, everyone.
And then we have Denis Letian, who is a Deputy Head of Unit in the Labour Market and Lifelong Learning Unit at Eurostat. Welcome, Denis.
Thank you. Good morning.
So let's start. We will kick off with Fernando. And Fernando will give us some background on data on skills demand and where do they come from. Fernando, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Romina. So I would like to talk where the data that we use for the tool, where is it coming from? So as we start, it is important that we distinguish what is a online job advertisement from similar concept that we have in labor market statistics, which is the job vacancy. So in the case of a job vacancies, what employers have is an empty share, a post that needs to be filled in. They need people to fill in that post, and they advertise, they publish a post somewhere, potentially online. But it is important to realize that not all job vacancies are advertised, and not all of those that are advertised online. So not all of them are there. And also that some job advertisements do not necessarily have a job vacancy behind it. Sometimes employers, they publish online job advertisements even before having taken the decision to recruit someone, to start preparing for an expectation that they will need people. They will need to increase their staff, and sometimes even just to prospect the labor market. So it is important to understand that an online job advertisement is not the same thing as as a job vacancy, but of course they are necessarily related. So they bring different information related, but not necessarily the same information. Can we move to the next slide? What do we do with an online job advertisement? So in online job advertising, we can find information about a job, what the employer is looking for, very often the location of a job, the description of the skills that the potential candidates should have, education level that is required, and so on. In the job advertisement, we can find some information in the form of structured fields where we have some information, we have some indication of what this information is about, and that helps us afterwards to extract the data from the content of the job advertisement, and we call these structured fields. In the example on the screen, we can see the job title, a data scientist in this case, where the job will be performed, the Luxembourg, and some time information, like, for example, a deadline to apply. Now, if you go to the next step, we have also some information in the job advertisement that is more like free text, that we call a job description. And this one, you can find many information, and it requires more advanced techniques to extract from parts of this text the information that we are looking for, like the skills, sometimes the location of the job, and so on. So, for example, for occupations that we use in the top and trending skills tool, we extract that information from the title. That information is basically always present there. For example, the location, sometimes this is present together with a job title, so we're going to find it in the same field. Sometimes it's in a dedicated field, dedicated just to the place, to the area. And sometimes we find it in the job description. So for location, we look for information about the location of the job in both the structured fields and also in this open field of the job description. And finally, skills. Normally, we're going to find these completely embedded in the job description somehow. So let's go to the next one. So this is the data that we are looking for in the job advertisements. Now we need to collect job advertisements, and here what we can see is several steps that we go through. The first one, which is of course very important, is what we call a landscaping. And in the landscaping, the purpose is to identify websites, web sources where we can find job advertisements. So there is an inventory. And this is done with a network of experts that we have, one for each country that is in the European Union, and also in Norway, Switzerland, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. So we cover, and also the UK, we're also covering the UK. And the idea is to make an inventory of all the relevant job titles. We use search engines, or the network, the experts use search engines, their own knowledge. They are experts on the labor market. They use their own knowledge about the local labor market, the national labor markets, to identify relevant or the most important websites. The content of these websites, the job advertisements, is assessed. The quality is assessed. And an assessment is made. Yeah. So after this assessment is made, we use an evaluation model that will lead us to choose which websites we will use to collect the sources, depending on their site. Websites where we have more job advertisements, of course, they're more important to be collected. Those that are more relevant, they rank higher in the search engines and so on. So we have many variables that we use to make this choice. So from these websites, then we do the injection of the content of the job advertisements. These may be via APIs, via web scraping, or sometimes even the bulk download of the whole HTML of the page. It depends on the website and how the website is designed. After we have the content, there is some pre-processing that we do to identify some spam, what we call spam, meaning that some web pages that we can find in job portals, in fact, are not job advertisements. We need to identify them and extract them. And after we do this cleaning, then we go to the information extraction. And this means precisely going through all the text, all the content of the job advertisement, and trying to look for what is the occupation, if there is information about the location, and what are the skills that are required, among other variables, education level required, and so on. The outcome of this step of information extractions is what we call in statistics the microdata. So we have a data file one row, one record for each job advertisement that we find, and the many variables that we can extract from the content. So right now we have around 200 million job advertisements, and we collect around 12 variables, although the most important ones are the ones that we are using here. With this microdata, then this is what we have available to produce statistics. So normally microdata is coming from surveys or administrative sources. Here it's coming from this information extraction process. Now, if we go to the next slide, I would like to talk a bit more about this information extraction. It all starts with the language identification. So we have a different pipeline for each language. So after we identify the language, we still have some specific pre-processing, and then we go to what we call ontology-based models. In a simplified way, this is basically dictionaries of words that refer to occupations, for example. So alternative ways to refer to occupations that we can find in the job titles. So this is the example for one variable. Of course, I'm oversimplifying here. It's a bit more complex, and we look for synonyms and so on. But they are mostly based on these dictionaries of words. In some cases, we also use machine learning models when the results from the ontology-based models are not very good. Now, this is a fallback solution, as machine learning, although very powerful, it requires loads of data, what we call training data, to train these models, and these are very difficult to obtain. So most of the models we use are in fact these dictionaries. And then after the application of these models, we can have this structured information. We go from hundreds of thousands of different namings of job titles to a subset of 400 different occupations harmonized, so that we can then use to make our analysis and produce our statistics. So this is how we go from the content that we find on websites, on job portals, to the data that then is eventually used for statistics and the application in this particular case. So this is the last slide that I'm presenting.
Thank you very much, Fernando, for this interesting overview. I have a couple of questions for you. Can you share a bit more about the data collection, which kind of statistics these are, and elaborate more on this?
What kind of statistics we can produce? So at the end of this webinar, we will see one particular example. We're producing several what we call experimental statistics that inform us about what we can do with the data source, given this is a new data source. The app itself is an example. Other things that we have done in the past is, for example, identifying functional areas and the market concentration, so in the labor market concentration. So this has been used for several use cases. We in official statistics are really in the beginning of using this data source. This tool, this top and trending skills tool, is a way for us to see how can we explore such amount of detail that we have in the data. Yeah. So we are really in the beginning. It's important to have these experimental statistics. On one hand, we need to distinguish this from what we produce with our traditional sources. They're very well tuned. We have many years, sometimes several decades of producing this. We know them very well. These are new data sources for which we have less information. So we need to slowly start to produce. Have warning, this is still experimental. This already provides some insight that it is important to provide to the statistical users, and at the same time we need some feedback to know if we should invest and learn from this new data source.
Thank you, Fernando. Very interesting. And on a more personal note, how did you get to work with new data sources? What is the most challenging aspect of this work?
Well, it is a very challenging. I've been working in statistics for almost 30 years, mostly with the surveys, so with the traditional sources. What might be surprising is that so much things are new. I would expect that a lot of what we know about statistics we could use, and it turns out it's really different. We almost have to reinvent everything. Just to give an example, it's very common that when we are dealing with data, we just validate the data, do some data editing, and then we compute our statistical tables again. And we do this iteratively. Well, it just turns out when we have such amount of data, this actually is a very expensive process, and we have to do it differently. We cannot keep running and processing the data all the time. It takes time and it costs much more money. So it's even the way we just deal with the data has to be adapted. We have to change our perspective and our habits on how we deal with the data. But what the most fascinating aspect of working with these new data sources, in particular when talking about big data, is the amount of detail that we can find. And this is what we can see here in this application. This is what is fascinating. This amount of detail is definitely not possible to obtain with traditional methods. So it's fascinating to see what else we can learn that has been out of reach with our traditional sources.
Thank you very much for revealing a bit more about the background. Stay there because I think there will be other questions coming in. And now let's move on to Julia. And Julia, you will get a bit more into the tool and actually show us how it works. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Romina. I will share my screen with all of you in a moment because I would like to show the live to you because, I mean, Fernando gave you the insights now, how, everything came on about, the background of the data. So, but I would like to actually present the tool. First, I would like to show you where you can actually find the tool on the Eurostat website. And for this, under the heading data, we have a dedicated page to what we call data visualizations. And here you can see under the topic people and society, you have our top and trending skills tool. So this is an easy access via the data visualization page where you can find the tool. And we also, from time to time, we promote it in social media on our website. The link to the tool will also be posted in Slido for those of you who are connected there. So now let's move on to the tool because, as Fernando explained, it's a wealth of data, which best is, let's say, digested by everyone maybe in a more visual way. So here in this tool, you are greeted with an interface where you first have to select the country of your interest. I choose Luxembourg today because I'm based in Luxembourg. And I will choose, for example, you have a list of occupation here, which is sorted from A to Z, where you can make your choice. I will choose financial professionals because that's a big group in Luxembourg. And then I can, with this information that I enter, I can enter the tool. And here we have different types of visual presentation. As you can already maybe guess now, the interface of the tool is very easy to use. It is very intuitive for you to navigate in the tool. And I will show you, let's say, a few things now so that later on when you want to explore the tool yourself, select the country, you can explore it yourself. So the first visualization that we have here is called ranking. So it shows the top skills. As Fernando explained before already, it is the top skills which are requested in this online job advertisements. And as a percentage, they're presented here as a percentage of all the job advertisement on which the data is collected. In this top skill ranking, you can see that there is a comparison to the previous year. So in an easy way, visually, you can quickly see that, for example, the most demanded skill for finance professional in Luxembourg is to adapt to change, which remains unchanged compared to the previous year. When you mouse over here, you can also get the exact values. So you see that it's dropped slightly, but it is still the #1 skill. The second skill, to assist customers, has made its way up from number 3 in the previous year to #2, to the second most demanded skill for finance professionals in Luxembourg. And like this, you can easily get a quick impression. You also see that there are some skills that newly came in, so that were not, requested in the previous year, maybe, like show responsibility, use office systems, or they made their way up from, let's say, the bottom, somewhere not the top 10, into the other ones. On the same time, you also see that we have some skills here at the lower end. These are the skills that dropped out of the top 10 compared to the previous year. So meaning they were, as you can see on that side of the screen, they were amongst the top 10 skills in 2021, and in 2022, they dropped out. So this ranking gives a very quick and easy way, for everyone to check in their country, or maybe the country they want to work in the EU, for a profession, to check what are the most demanded skills. So let's say now you would like to maybe, move on a bit and explore it a bit more in detail. You can do that also by filtering by the type of skills. So by default, we show all the skills, but let's say you're specifically maybe interested in digital skills for that occupation. You can only filter out the digital skills, which will of course also be partly some that are shown under all skills, but here you will also see some more and only skills that relate to digital skills. We have specific skills, meaning specific to this occupation, that can be filtered on, and general skills, which are also a lot like soft skills and general skills that are not maybe specific for this occupation we have selected now, but also could, are general skills like, as we said, see here, lead a team or show responsibilities that are for sure skills that are also demanded in other job professions. So this provides you a way to dive in a bit deeper if you want to, kind of know more. The second type of visualization that this tool offers to you is to explore trends. So moving here, you can see that we're still with Luxembourg and the finance professionals. I still have the option, of course, to filter by, the skills to be a bit more in detail if I wish to. And by default here, we show the top 10 skills that you had seen before under the ranking. But here you see a longer time series for each of them. As you remember, in the ranking, we only saw it compared to the previous year. Here you see that we actually show a time series from 2019 to 2022. And I'm also very happy to announce that we are about to release the 2023 data in the coming days. So you will have even one more time period to explore to see how certain skills change. Of course, this trends is very interesting maybe to explore for certain professions as well, maybe during COVID times, what has changed, did certain skills go up or were demanded more, were demanded less in the online job advertisement. So these trends here offer you a very good way to dive a bit more into that and compare it over time. As I said, we can do again the same. We can filter only the digital skills where we see, there are kind of some slight developments here. So having computer literacy slightly went down, which also could mean that some other skills, of course, gained a bit more popularity. So the trends tool or the trends visual way is again very easy to understand, very easy to explore, very easy to get information. The last of the three visualizations that we are presenting is a bit more, let's say, advanced in the sense, so it is a scatter plot. So for those of you who are statisticians, you might be familiar with what a scatter plot is. For those of you who aren't, on a scatter plot, we have two different axes, meaning you see here that on the y-axis, we have the change compared with the previous year. So how did it develop, the 2022 compared to the year 2021 in this case now, and the percentage of that specific skills of it's mentioned in the online job advertisements. So in case you forget what this abbreviation OJA means, you still have it here in the title. It always refers to online job advertisements. So for example, here we can see in that scale that the use of office system is demanded by almost half of the online job advertisement. However, you can see here on the scale that all these jobs for the financial professionals slightly went down. So to show you here, for example, a different example, I will choose Germany, and I will choose the with the general office clerks, for example. So here you see a slightly different view in the scatter plot, because you see that, for example, there's one skill which really rose a lot, or basically was demanded way more often in the online job advertisements than in the previous year. And this is the skill which is called adapt to change. And it is also one of the most, the most demanded skill amongst all the skills in this profession. And again, here we can also, for example, filter again for digital skill. So you see here the skill having computer literacy, which of course it's for general office clerks, as a general computer literacy is maybe, it's rather clear one of the most demanded digital skills. But you also see that it increased quite a lot compared to the previous year, while, for example, use of Microsoft Office or even here online communication tools remained more or less stable. So the scatter plot is, let's say, another third way to explore the data, maybe in a more detailed way. Then if you really want to dive into, of course, you can also, then start comparing certain countries. So if you have, for example, the office clerks in Germany, and you want to see, how is it in France, the situation, it's very easy here in this tool. You just change, the data is displayed based on your interest, based on what you wish to explore. And as I said, we are very close to release the 2023 data, so you will even have fresh data very soon. From my side, to finish, to mention is maybe that here on the top, we have a little I button, which stands for information. So in this information button, you find quite a good summary again of the content. So meaning also, where does this data come from? What we put here, the points to consider when you use this data, because as we said, it is experimental data. And Fernando has already explained a bit how this data is collected, how it comes about. But of course, there's still, as we say, some background information that will be good for you to maybe read upon when you use the tool, or when you actually use the data in the tool and interpret them. You also have some key definitions here. Again, if you forget what were again online job advertisements, you can find it here if you want to know what is an occupation, how do we actually this classification, or the occupations that are available in the list that you can choose. You can read a bit about here. What is a skill? I mean, that is also maybe, not always clear for everyone here. So it's all summarized in a very good and easy to understand way. Here in this information button, you have also information about the methodology, which will help you again also to understand a bit more, just to give you the background and to be transparent about the data that are presented in the tool. And you can also share this tool. You can share it on the social media, or you can email it to your colleagues, to yourself, in case you want to save it for later and check it out later. This is also possible. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this little tour of the tool. As I said again, it is available on the data visualization page from the Eurostat website, where you can find it and you can explore it for yourself, and of course choose your country or the country of your interest and the occupation you are interested in, because I just gave you a little sneak preview and glance of something selected now, but I'm sure you will have your own questions or your own interest to explore. I will stop sharing my screen, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julia, for having guided us through the tool. It really looks like a very interesting tool. So I think we're all eager to go and play and discover for our own countries. For information, the link to the tool will also be posted in Slido by our colleagues, so you will also find it there. Julia was a bit interested in knowing a bit more about the process behind the creation of the tool. How many people worked on this? How long did it take? Were there any specific requirements you had to take into account?
Yes, thank you, Romina. So the one side we have to distinguish is, of course, the data, which were produced by Fernando and Denis and the team working on the data. That is the one side, which is, of course, very time-consuming and took a long time. From our side, we were just 3 people. So it was our graphic designer who did a mock-up, who produced a bit like how the tool should look and behave and what we actually want to visualize. We usually do it because it's a good way to find mistakes, to see things that work or don't work before you actually engage in developing a tool, and then you spend a lot of time on developing it and then find out that something doesn't work is really a pity. So we had our graphic designer who worked on the graphical aspect, and then we have our developer it was one developer who started developing this tool once we all agreed how the tool should look and behave. He started the development of the tool. We did several rounds of testing, that there are no bugs, that everything works fine and smooth. And I did the coordination also a bit between, kind of the development side and the data and content side. So we were a rather small team, but it worked very, very well. And I think, it was a great success in the end. So maybe to mention, we released the tool end of December 2023, and we only started the real development work in September 2023. So it was a rather short development time for us as well.
Thank you very much, Julia, for sharing this successful experience. And now we will move on to the last presentation by Denis. And Denis will tell us about data on labor shortages and present the ongoing work on these indicators. Over to you, Denis.
Thank you, Romina. So the top and trending skills, the tool that you have seen presented by Julia, provides detailed information on the skills sought in the labor market for each occupation and each country. But it's also important to have a more global indicator which tells about, let's say, the main bottlenecks in general faced by employers when trying to recruit. This kind of information can benefit both employers, of course, but also employees, students, to orient their career or their training path toward the most, let's say, promising or the most the occupation with the best employment perspectives. So this is fully acknowledged by EU social partners. So next slide, please. So the social partners, they are in fact the representatives of the employers and the employees, and they met earlier this year at the initiative of the Commission, of the European Commission in Brussels, in Val-Duchesse. And further to this summit, the European Commission tabled an action plan to tackle the important labor and skills shortages that EU economies are facing now, especially since the COVID. So an indicator on labor shortages, of course, would serve important policy needs in this regard at European, national, and also local levels. So when turning to existing statistics, so in the next slide, we are already publishing information on labor shortages in my unit, in labor market statistics unit. And this is the so-called job vacancy rate. So the job vacancy rate is computed as a ratio where we divide the number of vacant posts by the total stock of occupied posts plus those vacant posts. And this is what we call the job vacancy rate. This indicator is well known, widely used. It has important strengths, especially it is very reliable. It's based on surveys according to well-established methodology, but it has also shortcomings. So maybe in the next slide. So, and these shortcomings are mainly that we lack important breakdowns. So we provide a good macroeconomic indicator on labor shortages for the whole country, let's say, maybe by NAS section, by some NAS industry, but not by occupation and not by region. And this we cannot provide using traditional sources like surveys for a very simple reason, which is the cost. It would be extremely costly to collect this detailed information via surveys. And that's why Eurostat turned to this new source, which was described by my colleague Fernando, which are the online job advertisements. So there again, as always the case with data sources, you have strengths and shortcomings. Of course, the strength is clear. We have a wealth of information at occupation level, detailed occupation level, at regional level. But of course, there are also some shortcomings, especially the fact that there could be some double counting of the same vacancies. And there could be also some bias in the data. We are not sure that OGAs cover all occupations fully, as would be the case for traditional surveys. So there are strengths and shortcomings, and the challenge for Eurostat was to take the best of both data sources to develop a labor shortage indicator. So in the next slide, you will see how we propose to design this new indicator. We combine the data from OGA, which are a proxy for the number of vacant posts. So on the numerator, you have OGA data, number of OGA data. And for the denominator, so the stock of occupied posts, we could not take it from job vacancy statistics because we lack the detail. So we took it from the EU Labour Force Survey, which provides information on the number of employees by occupation and by region. So this was the indicator proposed. Of course, this is still a work in progress, but we have first results that we can already display. We'll see in the next slide. So here we have ranked the top 20 occupations with the highest shortages according to this new indicator. What's interesting from this ranking is that you see there is a mix of technical and sales positions in this top 20. Number one is for sales, the sales, marketing, and development managers. They are ranked number one, clearly, with some gap with the second, and with a large increase in 22. So it's interesting to see how data develop in 23, which, as Julia said, will be soon available. So there are older sales workers, which are ranked third. We have retail and wholesale trade managers ranked number 12, sales, marketing, and public relations professionals number 13. So quite a number of sales professions which are highly ranked. So for me, this is the first finding. There are also technical positions. So it's really a blend, it's a mix. Technical positions that you will find in this top 20 are mainly related to the IT domain. Not only, but mainly. For instance, you have software and applications developers and analysts, which is ranked number 2. You have database and network professionals in 6th position. You have information and communication technology service managers, number 11. So of course, we see here digitalization at work, I would say. The digital economy would also embrace client information workers, I would say, in a broad sense, financial and mathematical associate professionals and numerical clerks, which are all listed in this top 20. So digitalization is, of course, playing a big role. We, on the industrial side, I note as well, there is quite a big lack of manufacturing laborers, which is in the top 4, and engineering professionals, number 7. So this gives you already, I think, first indication of where we have the main bottlenecks in the EU, because the figures there are for the EU as a whole, EU 27 in general. Of course, we plan to release data by country, not only for the EU in total. My last remark on this ranking is that we miss, I think, their healthcare and education professionals. And this is probably linked to one weakness of the OGA source, which is that we do not cover maybe fully the vacant posts in those sectors. Voilà, so thank you. This is what I wanted to share with you, let's say, before we actually release these indicators, because this is still in development.
Thank you very much, Denis, for your presentation. And actually, when do you plan to release these indicators on labor shortage? Is there a timeline?
Alors, this project is going through the general procedure at Eurostat to validate experimental statistics. So we have a dedicated committee of methodologists who are analyzing the methods proposed and who give their green light. So we are well advanced in this process, and I really hope we can release the data before the summer. So this would be our target, let's say.
Thank you. Okay, so we will remain tuned in. I have another question for you. What is actually the main challenge in covering labor shortages in statistics?
Alors, initially, the main challenge was, as I mentioned, the lack of detail from traditional sources. Then when we started working with this OGA data, the challenge was to, let's say, combine them with all the traditional sources like the LFS to derive a meaningful indicator, which would be stable over time, which would tell something on the economy. So far, I think our experience is quite positive. So we really believe this will bring some added value to the users.
Thank you. Thanks to all the presenters. And now we will move to the Q&A session. I would just like to remind you again about Slido. We are still collecting questions through Slido, and there is the code again. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. We also want to stick to time, so if ever we don't manage to answer all of them, we will post the reply later in Slido. So let's start. The first question is, will the EU aggregate be available? So will be data in the tool also available at the EU level? And maybe Julia, you want to take this one?
Yes, thank you very much, Romina. Yes, I mean, if we see that there's an interest, I think the idea would be that we indeed explore the possibility to add an EU aggregate, maybe let's say for the top skills. That was one of the first visualization that I just showed, because I think, yes, indeed, it gives a different, picture again overall of the EU. This won't be released in the coming days like the 2023 data, but indeed, together with Fernando and Denis, we will explore the possibility to add this then to the tool in the coming months. That's also, I think, the beauty of such online tools, that indeed they can evolve. They are not static. We don't need to, we can add things if interest evolves, if things evolve to these tools.
Thank you, Julia. And I think you might help us as well with the next question, which is how did you develop the tool and what did you use to develop it? You shared already some information. Maybe you can elaborate a bit more.
Yes. It wasn't me who's the developer, but of course I know a bit, I've been in this job for quite a while. So it is a single page application and it's based on Webpack and using JavaScript, HTML and CSS. So we use Visual Studio Code as an integrated development environment, Billboard.js and D3.js is open source. So then initially we convert the data that we received into an efficient JSON data model in order to display them in the tool. And maybe also to mention for those, because it is a technical aspect, the tool also has a high level of accessibility. So meaning for people who have limitations, for people who cannot use a mouse, they can, for example, they use the keyboard or the tab key to explore such a tool. And this tool also offers this.
Thank you very much, Julia. Let's move on. The next question is, will the tool be adapted to reflect new market changes, such as newly demanded skills or more in-demand occupations? And I think, Fernando, you can maybe help us on this?
Yes. Well, it is important for us to follow the statistical classifications that we have in use Yeah. So in the case of skills, we use what's called ESCO. That's an European statistical or European classification of skills, occupations, and qualifications, which is developed by the European Commission, not at Eurostat, but somewhere else at the European Commission. So for skills, this is what we use. It's a very large classification with around 13,000 skills there. Now, ESCO is updated quite frequently. There are new versions almost every year. Or I would say at least once a year there is a new version. And so far, what we have been doing is for every new version of ESCO that is released, we have been adapting our algorithms to capture the new skills that are introduced in ESCO. At the same time, we are working with the ESCO team, because online job advertisements are a wonderful tool to identify emerging new skills. So ESCO, the main method is what we call an expert-led development. So we use the knowledge of experts to develop the classification. Online job advertisements is a way of us to get information from the market. What are employers looking for? So through that, we have this ability to detect emerging skills, and actually we are taking an active role to identify these emerging skills, although we wait that they are integrated in ESCO. This is the decision that we have adopted. We wait that they are adopted in the classification, so we keep, classifications are important to keep the overall statistical system harmonized and comparable, which is very important. Now, for occupations, we use ISCO. That's the International Statistical Classification of Occupations. This one is developed by ILO, the International Labour Organization. ISCO has a longer development cycle, so it's around 10 years that it takes to do a new revision. We are in contact also with ILO in order to use online job advertisements to identify new emerging occupations. And I know that there are discussions at ILO to see if it's possible to reduce the cycle, but we are tagged to this classification, and so this one takes a little bit longer for us to emerge. So far, what we are doing is we are using the classification. We're not showing new occupations in this tool. We're not putting in the data, although we do have a process of identifying new emerging skills and new emerging occupations.
Thank you very much. And I think we have another question for you, Fernando. The skills tool is also available at CEDEFOP. So what is the difference between your tool and CEDEFOP one? And for those who don't know, CEDEFOP is the European Agency for Vocational Education and Training. Yeah. Thank you.
So in fact, we work very closely with the CEDEFOP. So the data that we see in this tool, in fact, is the same data that is used by the CEDEFOP in its online tool for exploration of skills and so on. We have been collaborating the last 4 years with this process. In fact, the data production system that we are using was developed by CEDEFOP, and then Eurostat and the National Statistical Institutes. We have joined force our efforts with CEDEFOP. So we work together in a joint venture with the CEDEFOP to do this. So we work together. The data is the same. The developments are the same. We're in contact with ISCO. It's both Eurostat and CEDEFOP. Then the tools themselves, of course, they are different presentation of the data. Right now, there is a broader set of variables explored in a CEDEFOP tool. It's the ones that we have also. Here we focus on the top trending skills, on the variables that we think we have a better quality. So we want to focus on those. And what we have tried to do with this tool, as I've mentioned already in the beginning, and then I'm going to repeat, is how can we explore the level of detail that we can obtain with this data source? And then now I take the opportunity to even say, okay, right now we have ISCO at 3 digits level, the third level of disaggregation of the classification of occupations. In fact, we are producing the data at 4 digits. We could go even in more detail. We are looking at analyzing by country. We could go by region, but we have to put the limit. So the richness of data is such that in fact we face the challenge of how to make all this information digestible to the statistical users.
Thank you very much, Fernando. Let's move on to the next question. Why is there that lack of data in the tool? Because you are gathering job posts from databases where those don't exist. Is there a plan to add that and social jobs? And I think this is for Denny.
Yes, thank you. Indeed, it's a good question. You know, in the public sector, in administration in general, you have this traditional way of recruitment, which goes through general competitions. And this, of course, is out of scope of this online job advertisements, I think. So we cannot pretend that we cover all of those professions, especially teachers and some of the healthcare sector. However, there are also more and more alternative ways of recruiting public employees via job ads. And of course, in that case, we capture them via the OGAs. So my answer would be mixed in this respect. We cover some of them, but we cannot pretend to have full coverage. And this is, I think, something to mention to the users.
Thank you very much, Denis. We have one more question. Is there a way you can compare results by country? Julia, do you want to take this one?
Yes, sure. Indirectly, yes. You saw when I just presented the tool that, of course, I have the possibility on the top to change the country. It's not ideal if you're looking for real like cross-country comparison. We are aware of that. However, the difficulty was, of course, also to develop or to create a tool that is digestible, that is intuitive to use without being overwhelming, because the data behind is quite substantial. So we aimed in the first step now, as I said, we released the tool in December 2023 to provide an intuitive tool that helps to explore the data. And we focused in the first step now on the, let's say, like on the, that you can select one country and explore the situation for different occupations for that country. But indeed, we know that a cross-country comparison is always interesting. And of course, then a challenge is how to keep the tool simple and easy to use and, still offer that level of exploration, which I think is definitely something we will engage on, because it is an interesting fact and it is an interesting way to look at the top skills if, amongst different European countries, what is trending, what is, maybe also going down, and to do this. So I think this is let's say, some homework for us to look how we can, adapt the tool in the future to keep it relevant and to keep it interesting for our users.
Thank you very much, Julia. I think we still have time for one more question. Have you considered using large language models to extract data from online job advertisements? Fernando, do you want to take this last question?
Yes. We are considering, so right now we use these more simple models like dictionaries of words that take into account synonyms. We introduce them, we introduce them into these dictionaries, but what they cannot do is take into account the semantics of what is written in a job advertisement. So we have been experimenting with the new classifiers. They seem to be much more precise than the ones that we have right now, precise in the sense that they identify the right occupation. They are, of course, more more time-consuming and more expensive. So we have developed them for around 5 languages, and we are now internally, exploring it to see if we can expand these to other languages, the remaining 30 languages, or the remaining 25 languages that we cover in the data production system. So we are not using ChatGPT. We are using open source large language models to do this.
Thank you very much. And we have one very last question, which we might still take. Do you have an ideal model for the country where your reliable prediction can go? Fernando, can you help again on this?
The question is not very clear to me.
Maybe we can ask the person to reformulate this slightly to really understand what that means. And meanwhile, we've got another one. Meanwhile, so let's take this one and then see. I noticed that in software technologies, requested do not come up, like frameworks, programming languages. Are they not classified as skills?
I can answer this one. So that's a very important question, a very relevant question. It is important to notice that the skills that you can see there are the skills being requested by the employers. They are not the full set of skills that are required for you to perform a particular occupation, right? So, of course, there are many other skills that are required for you to perform. If they are implicit or they are in full supply in the market, I would say, if they are not particularly demanded, then it's natural that employers do not mention them in the job advertisements. So it's important to keep in mind that what we can get the data on skills that we get from online job advertisements are normally those that are lacking, I would say, or emerging.
Thank you very much again. So I think it's time we start to wrap up, and I'm sure many of us will now go and play with the tool, and probably we'll come back with more questions. So for this, don't worry if ever you have questions that you didn't have the time to ask now or you didn't think about. You can always contact our multilingual user support service, and my colleagues are posting the address in Slido. I would like to thank all the speakers and all the participants. I think it has been a very interesting section. And before you go, I'd like to say a couple of things. I would like to remind you that we will have in Slido a short survey where you can tell us how much you like the webinar and give us some feedback. That's always appreciated. As I said at the beginning, this section has been recorded and the recording will be available in Facebook and on our website. We're not stopping here. As you know, we have other webinars coming up. And on the 21st of May, we will have a webinar on unlocking informed decisions with high quality statistics. So if you're interested in exploring the link between statistics and decision making, please come and join on the 21st of May for the webinar. Otherwise, I would like again to say a big thanks to our speakers, to all of you for having participated and for your questions, and I wish you a good rest of the day.
Thank you.